Welcome to part two of Reward Systems with our guest, Steve Kerr. You're very welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Happy to be back.
Great to have you back. The rubber is going to hit the road today. We're going to tell you how to create a positive reward system, how to define it, much, much more than that. The Bullseye Exercise, wing to wing, which was a great system that Steve put in place in GE, loads more besides. But I wanted to kick us off with a quote here where Steve says, if there are things you'd like your people to do and you think they can't be rewarded, you are wrong, because anything that can be measured can be rewarded. If you'd like some things done that you think are impossible to measure, you're wrong again. You probably neglected to operationally define what you want, because anything that can be described in actionable terms can be measured. That teases us up beautifully for the three stages, and we're going to deep dive into those three stages. How do you create an effective reward system? And we're with the expert of that, the guy who wrote the paper many, many decades ago. Steve, let's deep dive onto these 3 points and start with one, which is define performance in actionable terms.
The exercise has the name Bullseye only because we shape it as a target. And in the middle, which is the key, are behaviors. Behaviors can always be observed. You can watch people doing them. So the Bullseye exercise it's a year from today, and you're celebrating the success of your initiative, whatever it is. It's great. People are doing it. If it's attendance is showing up, if it's performance, if it's inventory, if it's profit, return on asset. What are you noticing that's different? How do you know it's successful? People are satisfied, or you say, what does a satisfied person do that a dissatisfied person doesn't do? You always keep pushing on this question. I remember I had a meeting with some CEO of a franchise business in Texas, and he was upset. With today's generation, they don't have the same attitude toward work. I wish I had a better attitude when I was young, but you can't measure better attitude. This is how people tend to define performance. So you say, imagine that section 5, the people have a great attitude. Section 9, they really don't. What are the people in 5 doing? There's the word, doing, action, behavior. What are the people in 5 doing that the people in 9 aren't doing, or vice versa? And you can say, what do I want more of? What do I want less of? Once you get them into behaviors, I want more of this, I want less of that. And it's interesting because sometimes people disagree about how much, or they'll say, I want more of this, but not too much. So you begin building limits. Now you want to connect incentives, rewards to the things you want more of, and you start with disincentives and punishments necessary to the things you want less of. And you can always start, what are we seeing a year from now that we're not seeing now? You can't get it wrong, but you'll see what happens to your results when you use that.
Steve, one of the things you talked about in the book was how when you worked with organizations, you'd often pull random mission statements out of a lucky draw, and people couldn't define often their own from a urinal manufacturer's. And you mentioned also Enron's code of ethics. So this one, it goes as follows. We are responsible for conducting our business affairs in accordance with all applicable laws and in a moral and honest manner. We want to be proud of our company and to know that it enjoys a reputation for fairness and honesty and that it's respected. And this is your point, that if you begin with that, that doesn't reflect at all the behaviors in the company.
You can see how hypocritical or intentionally deceptive that was, because it isn't that they didn't connect. They were doing what to us outside looked like the opposite, diametrically opposed to what they said. They were in for open and honest and trusting. They were deceivingly concealing and putting double books and all.
Let's give a couple of examples. Like some of the stuff in the book, it's really helpful for, and it's a small book. It's a brief read. It's this part of this memo to this CEO series that Harvard Business Press did.
Everything I knew, I couldn't find a bigger book. I ran out of stuff I knew.
I just wanted to share with the audience a few of the tips you talk about. One is when someone comes to you for a signature, for approval, you should count the number of people who have already signed off. If the number is 2 or more, you should ask yourself, well, why am I signing this? What value am I adding? And you said you took the view that once 3 people have thought about something, additional layers of approval, we're not adding control or accountability, but diluting it. These are challenges that are everywhere today. And I'd love you to share this, because this does get in the way of innovation and reinvention.
You say, why am I signing this? What value am I adding? And sometimes it's a good answer. Well, the law requires you have multiple signatures. It's not really an insult. But if you're trying to bust bureaucracy, and again, Welch said, you got a car, it's got 100,000 miles on it, breaks down all the time, it's a lemon. Question, was it a good car at one time or was it always a lemon? Answer, who cares? He said, it's not working. His point was, stop working. Who did this? Right? All that's going to do is create a terrible situation because people start denying. If you stop punishing good behavior, you'll probably get good behavior. People are not going to be angels if you're killing them for doing it. One example, we have these things called workouts. You're getting people at all levels of the organization, and they come out, they're going to come up with ideas. What are you going to keep doing, stop doing, start doing, keep doing? And then you give reports, and in the end, the top leadership makes sure that the immediate bosses who are in the room are not going to turn on these poor people for telling the truth. So this guy's just one example out of a zillion. He runs some Xerox machine in some place. And he says, I run this machine and there's 4 pages of lead, just numbers and stuff. And then you get the 2-page report and then there's like 6 pages of trail code. So if you ask for a 2-page report, it's going to chug out 12 pages. This guy's great. He's really not high level at all. And he said he's calculated the cost of the paper. He's calculated the cost of the reference. And he's the cost of removing the paper and then, of course, of buying more paper. And it turns out that his machine is $67,500 a year wasted because they're doing high volume stuff all year. And it turns out there are thousands of these machines around GE. It was probably 8 figures. It was probably more than $10 million a year wasted. And this is a guy, and he had no place to tell. Well, okay, but what's the cost of changing it? And he said, oh, you have to hit the suppress button. Because if you hit the suppress button, it'll give you the 2 pages.
At that point, I'm going to skip right to the end and then we'll come back to where we are, because I did want to cover, and I don't want people to miss this, is the importance of the reward. These are the trade-offs that you have with reward systems. Is really important to know that you're often asking for candor from people. Tell us the truth. We want to know the truth. We want to know bad news. And then you actually punish them when they do.
And sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes it's just unintentional. They're running a phone center, so they start measuring how many times the phone rings before you pick up. And then they blame the poor person there, and the person may have 4 phones, and that's good because it turns out the count starts when you pick up, and then it traces the number of calls. Okay, I don't have to pick up. Huh. So, oh my God, what a bad employee. What do you expect him to do? The rat pulls him later, he gets a shark. After 3, he stops pulling it. So don't blame the rat. That's another thing. Why is this person doing it? Now, he may be lazy, he may be breaking rules, but there's a decent chance that he's responding rationally to a crazy reward system that you set or that you inherited.
Don't blame the rat. Don't blame the rat. And Steve, a great example you give was an army officer, and he took his feedback sessions really seriously with people. And then he marked them down and he said they needed to work on things. And then when that got given to his superior in the organization, he got punished and told, you need to pull your socks up. Your team are underperforming. And what's he going to do? Not do that again.
It's human nature. All he says, when you get something you don't like, just before you start yelling, why is a probably rational person doing it? And then maybe there's no rational reason why he comes in on drug. It could be anything. I'm not saying you're at fault, but if you punish something, you get less of it. And if you punish Candor, you get less of it. And we used to have a survey. We just said, put down all the behaviors that make a difference. Here are the things I want. Here are the things I don't want. You get off the Bullseye drill. When they say, here are the behaviors more of less so, then you just go out and take the next step. And you say to the people in the plant, if you were to do each of the actions described below, what would be the reaction? Number 1, I'd be rewarded or approved. Number 2, I'd be ignored. Nothing would happen. Number 3, I'd be punished for disapproved. 4, but in the kind words, this place just screwed up. I have no idea what would happen. It never the same twice. So you get it back. These people think leaving early, they won't say what you prove, but they say, well, nobody notices, nobody seems to care. If you go in there with a fragile ego, you're going to try like a baby. If they're wrong, you see it. But if they're right, you got an action item. If they're wrong, you got an action item.
So you're talking about decision-making, speeding up decision-making, but a common question you get asked is, how many goals should you set? And your advice goes against all common recommendations.
It's a discovered number. And Of course, I'd rather have 2 things to worry about. I'll look great on those 2. Even 4, and probably won't script till you give me 9. So you say you start with a clean sheet of paper. You don't have to. You can start with the annual Bullseye drill, and what do you want more of, less of? And you get the list. These are all, whatever fits your culture, whatever you like personally, whatever the value add. When I say 3 things, or do the second one, do 1 and 3. So you're in your office working. You've had it starts. You've got a phone call. You better take this. So the first question is, who might be on the other end of this phone where you're saying, you better take this? So my boss. Okay, good. My boss's boss. And it could be family situation. Could be a supplier, could be a customer. And there might be 6. There won't be 26. And then the next question is, take them one at a time. Why might they be called? Your price is too high. Your stuff didn't show up on time. It's not the right kind. The thing broke in the box. That's if you say it's your customer. Suppliers, same things. Your check balance, or people know. And no, it'd be a person who doesn't deal with suppliers well know. But if you do the team exercise, collectively, you're going to find why they're trying. And then the question becomes, so you start with a clean sheet and you see who might be on the phone. And then when you look and you say, okay, and then you say the next question leading into measuring. So you just go ahead and you say, how would you know? If they might call you. So is the first time when the wife calls and threatens me for divorce, or the wife calls and says the kid is missing, or the supplier says your check bounced, or the customer says I'm losing Kevin Aidan instead of your brand anymore? That's too late. You do a great autopsy, and sometimes why aren't they buying them? When they're not coming back. But that's the point. Because you start with that. Of course, you'll find, the main goal is you'll find things that, the answer is, I really wouldn't know until the phone rings and somebody's angry on the phone. Hey, it could be the government, the politician might call, they'd be doing the ordinance the wrong way. But the other side is also interesting. If you're typical, you'll find there's things that you're spending time measuring and controlling, and the phone would never ring. There are things you're worrying about that really there's nobody on this planet that cares about you. Again, the mantra is always no blaming, no complaining. The Xerox guy, I don't know if he was punished, but he certainly wasn't rewarded. He was thirsty for a forum to have where he could say that he's wasting 67,500 parts on his Xerox machine. So that's the point. It's after people get off, what's his real motive? I have no real motive. I want more of the stuff you want. And now, by the time you get to rewards, if you didn't even look at rewards, you've done so much just by telling people what you want.
I was really interested in that because my first job was really in digital media, and we measured every metric. And I was sending it to all the managers in the company across this group. And I put a password on it to see who would ask for the password. And twice someone asked for the password. So I stopped doing the report for them and I started measuring things. But I found a quote, Steve, I thought you'd be interested. There's a quote from 1956. V.F. Ridgway said, what gets measured gets managed. But I found the full quote. You know, when they do these quote investigations, the full quote goes, what gets measured gets managed, even when it's pointless to measure and manage it, and even if it harms the purpose of the organization to do so. And that's to exactly your point. This clean sheet exercise, for me, said to me, it's about starting with a clean sheet and kind of go, let's blow it all up and start again today with the metrics we need today. What do we need to get rid of? What do we need to continue to measure? And that was the real thing I took from this.
Yeah. What do we want more of? What do we want less of? What should we keep doing? What should we stop doing? But make it safe. And it's amazing what your people can tell you. And it's not your fault if it's not safe. You may have inherited or bullied 3 years ago. People don't know you're different until you tell it.
One of the things you talk about, I thought was so important and I really wanted to cover was their use of stretch goals. And I'll set you up with a quote here from the book. You said, someone once noted that most people don't aim too high and miss, they aim too low and hit. Easy goals tend to demotivate people, as evidenced by research that shows that most people attain easy goals but don't greatly exceed them. When goals are set to mildly upgrade existing performance, people unconsciously restrict their thinking to solutions that are not very different from prevailing practices, key for innovation. You go on to say stretch goals, on the other hand, are so far beyond current levels that they force people to seek radically new solutions. Since stretch goals are so aggressive, they are often skeptically received, as they should be, since most of them don't ever get met. This was deeply troubling to you when you were in GE because its culture was built around strong expectations of success, attractive rewards going to employees who succeeded, and little forgiveness for those who fail. I thought that was a really key aspect to lean in on, particularly if you're in an organization that sets the goals and you keep dragging those goals down because you know that if I actually am too ambitious here, it'll come back and bite me in the ass.
It is counterintuitive. With stretch goals, you really have to, that last sentence, you don't punish failure, but you don't reward failure either. It is problematic. And so you didn't do it as a general matter of course. But in addition to the goals where you set it and you met them, or else, and that was necessary because other people's goals depend on yours. If you don't deliver a certain grade of skill, they can't build it. They can't build it, the plane can't fly. So in general, this is not a get out of jail free card. So in addition to the things you set where we expect you to perform, you're going to set a few stretch goals. They're not crazy high, but you have leeway. And we did that for the reason, that quote that you read, that people were meeting the goals, but there was such a punishment culture for not meeting them. That's why GE was so good. You didn't tolerate that. But then you really did set goals in the name of the goals you already had. You had, oh, look, we're going to be better next year. We're at 4% better, 5%. So you had the license to fail on stretch goals, and you would make them. They had to be obviously beyond their normal standard. But sometimes you're into inflation. You're thinking, if I were to make last year's numbers, they ought to give me a medal. So the stretch goal might be to only go down 3%. And it's got to be tied to something, whether there's a powerful new competitor or people moving away from steel to plastic. So what do you do? Number one, how he, she do it compared to last year? Another one, what's the industry standard? What's the competition doing? How does it look compared to them? You have those three, and you be as rigorous as you can. And at least some of the things you're blaming it on are going to be not just your product or your particular market. So it's better to have that uncertainty than the stuff most companies have.
When I worked in selling digital media versus analog media, and there was an old saying there where digital dimes and analog dollars. So the value was higher for the analog, and it was easier to sell because it was established. And we had this problem all the time where I was very ambitious, so I'd aim high, but come in below or sometimes exceed it. And it all depended on the market. It wasn't actually the effort. And eventually you started to realize this is actually going against me all the time. But we'll move on because, when you have done this kind of work, you really read the book and you're like, oh yeah, I was there. But part 2 is about devising comprehensive metrics that tracked actions and assessed progress towards our goals. And I'm going to set you up here with a quote because you say, rewards are easy to get excited about. Most people hear far too much about the goodies everyone else seems to be getting, bonuses, stock options, runaway CEO compensations, and the like. So when a consultant offers to bring your reward system into the 21st century, he or she usually gets a friendly reception. Measurement is a different story, though, you tell us. Chances are your organization has revamped its performance appraisal and review systems more than once in recent years, with no discernible gain in employee satisfaction, sometimes even less. And most people have little interest in going another round of this. That's too bad, you tell us, because starting at the wrong end, adding to the power of your reward system before upgrading your metrics is a huge mistake. I'd love you to tell us about this because I love what you say, Steve. The metrics are the table that supports the weight of your reward system.
You can't really develop a reward system stronger than the measurement system. You can, because some measurements are undeniable. So now you're back to seniority, which some people love. And let me guess, rich people love it. The young Turks don't. So you end up with lazy ways of measurement, and then they don't split the rewards. The more you make your rewards cutting edge, important, meaningful, the more stress you put on the measurement. So again, if the reward system gives 3% to everybody every year, because they're still alive at the end of the year. And if you're a good performer, you get 4%, which is one more than 3, which the government's going to take a third anyway on your tax system. And if you're outstanding, which was to be rare and amazing, so 2 people per section could be called outstanding. Of course, the managers who would then want to sanction your two longest service employees also happen to be the highest performers, rather than amazing coincidence every year. So they got 5%. It ended up being another form of seniority. So you want to say, well, that's terrible. But it is, because the measurement system was all you knew for sure was how long they'd been. So, of course, the rewards were going to be based on seniority. And the fact is, you could say loyalty pays off. I want senior people. A good reward system is one that gives you what you want. If you want seniority, start rewarding people hang around. But the people hang around are people who don't have good alternatives elsewhere. Therefore, some people don't give tenure the first year. To me, tenure gives you the right to stay at a place where they don't want you. And if they don't want you, then the question is, why do I want to be a place where they don't want me? They got an alternative. Now, maybe I was kidding myself, but I wasn't. But in my mind, I have places to go where they might want me. So why would I stay? So you can't start at the wrong end. And that's what people do. We had a good year. Here's bonuses to people. Okay. Every time you make a decision, you're sending a signal. High performers get the money. When you give it percentage of salary, the number of dollars is going to be much higher for the people who already have a lot of money. And the poor person is trying to get his own house someday. You give them the same percentage. The percentage of a terrible number is still a terrible number. So I'm saying you not to decide is to decide.
Steve, I wanted to ask you one that's really important. A guy you probably know, Edward Hess, wrote several books. One was called Humility is the New Smart. And you mentioned a softer skill like humility, which is a core skill in the world of volatility, not knowing, having the humility to say, I don't know, or to do what you did, for example, with your team, is to delegate the presentation, which is a kind of a psychic reward. It's not monetary, but go, you know what? I want the person who did the work to come to you as a senior team and present to you. These skills like humility are so hard to track and reward. But you say if you don't, they will take a back seat and you'll end up having people who are more bragging and telling you about what they did, reporting their wins, even though it was members of their team. And I wondered, how did you create reward systems to be able to unveil those kind of skills?
Well, to some extent, we probably do. It's not like we get an A on all these things. Some things you can be exactly right, but in a real life organization. So again, to me, I go back to definition. And in this case, you say humility. This guy's humble, this guy's not. What are they doing? So in my mind, it's a tautology. I make it true. I can encourage you. What are people doing now they weren't doing a year ago? What are the people in Denver doing? They're supposed to be this incredible culture in Denver. What are they doing? If they're not acting different in Kansas City or Dublin instead of London or Edinburgh, then I say, well, why do you care? If you can't tell me that they act differently, the minute they start connecting organs, they outcomes, I can help you.
Man, that's one of the huge problems with innovation is connecting stuff like R&D to future. And then I'm not getting rewarded this year. And maybe the person who takes over from me in 3 years will actually get the fruits of my labor today. So people don't actually reward today. But there's three things you talk about here that are really difficult when it comes to rewarding. So quartiling, quotas, and bifurcation. And you point these out. And I thought this was so important because they're still everywhere, these three things.
Well, quartiling is simply, you're ranking the people and you would simply say top 50%, top quarter, or you'd say we're too fat in this company. We got to cut the workforce by a fourth. So you got 75, maybe you got 25, or you got 90-10. He didn't do this uniformly, but he had people he thought were coddling people and they were not taking care of the dead wood. They didn't want to have unpleasant. Who does? He would say you got to fire about 10% every year. And the people we go last year, every year you got to do 10%. And I don't like it either. It really puts people in free with. If you got people, nobody ever loses their job. You keep losing good people because nobody will work for this person. At some point, you'll take action. So Jack just thought this malaise had built in, and he wanted to shake it up, bottom 10%. And can we agree on this? Can we agree that 10% of your people are in the bottom 10% of all your people? Well, it's a tautology. Of course, matter is equal. So he's giving that. It's another thing called 90-10. 90% of everybody think they're in the top 10% of everybody. But it turns out they're only 10% of everybody who's really in the top 10% of everybody. So 80% walk around deluded. Now, if you give some feedback, you'll have maybe 40% think you're in the top. The point is it's a number greater than 10 because you're not dealing any consequences. So they're missing out on the promotion. They're missing out on the big pay raise. They're missing out on everything. And they're not stupid. At age 48, I'm not going anywhere in this company. So he said, you call that protecting? He said, that's the most cowardly thing you can do. He said, let me tell you about GE. We were the most admired company. 5 of the 8 years I was there, GE was the most admired company. Forbes did the thing, Fortune did the thing. So, and Jack, he knew there was going to be a downturn before most people knew. The time to cut is not when you're really in deep trouble and nobody wants your people anymore. So he would say, don't embarrass them, but tell them. Well, don't wait. Every time there's a choice is shine, every time they come over me ring, you're killing these people. And by the time they wake up, nobody wants them anymore. And he said to them, here's what you do. You take the bottom 10% and you let them know they're bottom 10. Your measures are perfect. You may be wrong. Welch may be an ass. That's okay. Here's the thing. He said, from now on, your main job is looking for a job. And he said, take your time, get a good job, don't take forever. And in many companies, when they do, they march you out like a perp walk at 3 o'clock. They march you out, will send your stuff to the house. They don't give you notice. They're afraid you might hurt the company. He didn't segregate them. Unless it was ethics, send you out. But if it wasn't an ethical problem, stick around. You treat you fairly. You're not going to shingle. It's nothing embarrassing. But you just don't have a future here. Whether we're right or we're wrong, you don't have a future here. And the thing was, he did it early when the mass layoffs were coming. And GE people got really good jobs because they were on the list of people you wanted to hire. And some of them were high performers. They weren't bad people. In a different pool, they were bigger fish. So I still didn't like it. I'm not here to defend it, but he's not a dumb guy and he's not a cruel guy. And he said, keep in mind, that's the cruelest thing. You're not helping these people. He said, well, let's listen about why you're doing it. You're not doing it for G's sake. You mean you can't get people betting you about 10%? Of course you can. So don't tell me to help it. And you're not doing it for their sake. You're killing this guy. Then he ended up saying, you're doing it for your sake. You just don't want to have that conversation.
I know he got a lot of criticism for that and people called him Jack the Ripper and stuff like that. But I actually felt, in a way, you're freeing up that person's future where they might be in the wrong organization. They have potential, obviously, but if they're in the wrong place and they're not making progress, they're going to become cancerous in the organization. So in a way, it feels like you're doing a bad thing, but you're actually, and I didn't know the context of do it when things are going well, when the market's good, when their stock is high, not when their stock's low. And it's always easier to get a job when you're in a job.
That's right. They called them neutron jet. You had Jack Kirby, neutron jet, named after neutron bomb. It takes out the people and lets the buildings stand. And then he got grief for that. And he said, not letting them know is the cruelest thing you can do. So it's not ethics. They're not bad, but you should be looking for a job, Harry or Sally. And we're looking for somebody to take your job. So don't be forever about it. And the other thing, people forgot, they were so anxious to critically assassinate this guy. Well, GE gave the world the early models of the headhunters, and when you didn't sit on the third floor with all the people who were segregated, unless there was ethics and you're on your way out, literally. But you had an honorable position. It wouldn't be announced. Some people might know, but most people wouldn't know. And you had access to employment services and things where they would, maybe you don't do well in the pressure business, so short cycle business isn't for you. Maybe you're really good. Customers love this guy, blah, blah. So often there were features, okay, where we could go, and you help them, guide him, just like the short people would come in, what do you see as his strengths? Then they would go to the boss and say, Louis says these are his strengths. And he would say, the third one's delusional. But he said, 1 and 2 are correct. He is honest, he is accurate, he is detailed. And they often succeeded. And sometimes we did that, and we ended up realizing that the person was in the wrong job, but the right job is still within GE. We had fast cycle businesses, short cycle business. We had government businesses and consumer. You name it, we had it. We were in every SIC code, we were in every country. So sometimes they were on the bottom 10%, but it turned out they were not bottom 10% people in general. They were not in good position, good fit. But that was something you still started by having the tough conversations. So Jack's way, really, I didn't like it for reasons, but it was much better than what other people tend to do with their low performers.
Steve, a couple of other things I thought we'd share was creating financial and non-financial rewards that meet employers' needs. And now I'm going to give a bit of context to this. So one of the things I found incredibly difficult, right? So I was a professional rugby player, and when you had only 15 places on the team, and even being a bench player, it was demoralizing. But today, squads exist where there's 30, 40, 50 in some cases players. And some of those players only sometimes get games, and they're in the lower level, lower stakes games. And for me, I found, if I ever found myself there, absolutely demoralized. And I use that almost as an analogy for what happens in organizations where there's only so many slots for the senior executives. There's only so many slots. And how do you create a reward for people to keep them focused, keep them engaged, etc.? Because this is something you touch on in the book as well.
Organizations that take it at the top, you're going to have more people lower down than you have higher up, and the executive cafeteria is not going to have enough room for everybody, and it wouldn't be special if it did. So in a way, scarcity is itself a reward. There's a number of ways of getting at this. For example, there are different types of rewards, and you mentioned it. Money is usually in short supply. Even when you make a lot of it, there's usually a lot of potential uses for it. So you have to give people enough so they can sustain their family and have a decent life. In fact, in some jobs, everybody gets mediocre pay. There's no incentive. Governments often use that. Civil service jobs in many cultures, not all, but is a way of just avoiding the problem. So when you can have money as one of the rewards, but other rewards are much more available. So availability is a characteristic of a reward. And in the end, you can't give people none of it, but you take a job and they go to the clergy or they become teachers. Unless you got really bad counseling, you didn't go there for the money. You're not going to be a teacher for stock options. And you had a high percentage do it. And it's wonderfully rewarding in other ways. So it's the point. Money is usually not available to everybody. And then timeliness is very important. A deferred reward loses most of its power. Goldman, more than most, had a lot of money because they made a lot of money, but they didn't know what the situation was even by the end of the year. So you're into the next year before you knew. So the trouble is you do good in April and next February, you may get a pay raise. Well, we track better than rats, but the hamster pulls a lever, and if the thing doesn't come down in 11 seconds or less, they never make the connection, so they don't pull the lever. So people are more patient than rats and hamsters, but a deferred reward loses a lot of its power. So it doesn't mean you can't use it, but you use lead indicators of that. So praise by the boss, whether it's written, those can be timely, and you can say, you did a good job. And the implication will be, we'll take care of you later on. So rewards can be timely or not, but you can build in indicators that something good is coming down the pipe. Right? And sometimes the timeliness is reversed. I came as a managing director level at Goldman, but there were many levels below. I was barely there, and they had me come in to report to the top committee, the management committee, and it was something that one of my subordinates had done, a young associate. And so he did. And we have a running rules, and one of them said, you do the work, you get to make the report to map it to whom. So you can do it. You can give people the kind of access that will shorten the time span before they're noticed. A bad boss will keep the people from being noticed. He'll take credit, or she'll take credit for all the good stuff. So something that happens quickly can be much less financially advantageous, but the immediacy of it, you finish a report, you go to the big room. Like that's my rule is whoever makes your presentation. So they go in there. It doesn't feel like a reward at the time. They'd rather have root canal than go into that room. They're terrified of these people. And then, but they're the guy to do it. And they go out and usually thank you. And then you walk, they go on the next agenda. But here's something that makes a giant difference. And I tell them, don't fake it. But if it's real, the division head or Hank Paulson, the guy who is the CEO, and he goes to be Secretary of Treasury. These are very famous, important people. And I have these associates or young analysts reporting because they want to know about coaching. This guy does coaching. He does the presentation. I'm not going in there and make a fool of myself. They want it. They get it from the best. Well, also, hey, thank you. They're talking to the wrong person. On the way past, just as you weigh the elevator, you stop and just tell them what you told me. So instead of thank you to the job, the CEO pops his head in. There's not even an office in this guy. They go to the guy's desk. There's 80 people about the planets. And this guy, Kerry, says, Kerry, I just want you to really help me. They really focus the conversation. Thank you. And he walks by. Well, you couldn't find a more important reward. It took Paulson 1 minute to do it. He didn't do it for it wasn't true. This isn't about faking anything. So the timeliness of a reward can be amazing, particularly if you're waiting for the longer time. In this case, it's called recognition. And once you do well, the opportunity to present to people 3 levels up, if you're good at it. Terry knows everything about coaching. I wouldn't have put him in there otherwise. So timeliness and reversible. If you give somebody a reward, they've earned it, but not all people are always good, and some things can't be reversed. Title is very hard to take back because it's stigmatic. So if you're a VP, it's hard to take it back. You put somebody in window office, you don't do a perk walk and throw them out. But there are a lot of things that, you have a title, you belong to a club, the club is annual, or you have some kind of recognition, prestige kind of rewards. Are very powerful. They won't replace money, but again, the inner satisfaction teachers get and members of clergy get, they're not suffering. They have the kind of jobs you dream about, the satisfaction they get, the feeling they get, welfare workers. So it's not idle fiction. You're not going to create as much altruism in a corporation. But even then, some of your people, medical systems, just saving lives with the early pacemakers. So there's so many things. So availability, timeliness, reversibility, and then the one that's most important, the performance contingency. In the example I said, the high performers get 5%, the people should be fired get 3%. So it's 2%. But also, you can't lose that. There's no performance contingency. It's based on membership, longevity, seniority. That's still okay, but some part of the reward has to be based on performance. If it's not, they'll still do it because they're rewarding themselves or their peer group. It doesn't mean you won't get it. But if you're a manager, you're supposed to cause it. You don't sit around hoping the right people are going to show up and work hard for you. They might. I'm not trying to be cynical, but you're supposed to cause that. It's the blending of these things. They should be available. They should be reversible. They should be timely. They should be performance contingent. And there's a couple other things. Basically, and remember, rewards can be financial, or they can be recognition kind of rewards, or they can be job content. Freedom, operation, responsibility, recognition. These are content. And some people, they go into professions where that is it. Many of them are happy when the people go home with big paychecks. At Goldman, the average retirement age in the managing director is 46. They had all the money in the world. They almost had to wear name tags so the family could see them. It's a brutal culture if you don't like your job. I liked it a lot, but that's me.
Steve, we have to get in wing to wing because it's something we talk about a lot on the show, is the idea, if you're even a startup, if you have some idea, if you want to actually see what's going on in your customers' lives, get out of the building, get away from the desk, get out there, get in their shoes. As you say, try to understand what makes the customer a winner or a loser in their business. And this was something you brought into GE that you called wing to wing.
It's seeing the world through the eyes of your customers. Most people know that's important, another customer survey, but this was really taken to a deeper level in GE. And basically, you could spend time with your customer. At GE, they rotate people into Crotonville. You'd spend 4 months with us or 6 months because you meet a lot of different businesses and customers, and you learn where your own future might be. You learn what businesses at GE you wouldn't have gotten to look at. You're working with people from GE Capital, medical systems, appliances, lighting, NBC, all television network. So among the rotations we would have is you'd spend time with the customer and you would do real work for them. And again, seeing the world through the eyes of the customer. Now, sometimes you can't afford it, the people, sometimes it has to be a shorter tour, but it wasn't just a visit. Some people, they routinely visit the customer, sit down. That's great. More is better than less, as always said. Now, here's just the example of why we call it the wing to wing. We made engines, and maybe in those days, the world's largest engine maker, and probably still true. And a lot of the biggest companies buy GE engines. Without the engine, the plane will not fly. It's been scientifically proven. So you're grounding an expensive piece of their operation while you do the repairs and the renovations and the lubrication and whatever the engine needs to work. And we do it in the plane. Something you can do on site, but sometimes you got to ship it, and we do it on our site. And it would take 4 days to do the thorough renovation and all that. So we set goals around it. And we did 4 goals. We'll have we do it in 3.5. We might be able to do it in 3. They really love it. It's a big deal. Now we go through the eyes of the customer. And they're saying, you guys are really slow. Well, big engine, sometimes you have to take it You don't just take it in the back of the car. These are things you have to transport them. We go spending time with the customer, seeing it through the eyes of the customer, wing to wing. It turns out the engine is off the wing for an 8 days. We take time to dismantle, we time to ship it. We don't count that. We can't start counting until it gets into our hands. And then, because when we release it to them, we're done. We got a 4-day thing. We're taking improvement goals. We get it down. They're doing it. It off the wing 8 days. That's 8 days they're not getting revenue on that equipment. So ultimately, you're being judged on the metrics that your customers are. Is that engine's off the wing 8 days? So we offer to go in. They could have it on their property for less than 2, but sometimes more than 1 day before they knew they had the engine back. We got real interested in why don't you know? What's the internal system? So in some cases we can't help, but at least we found we can improve the warning system and let everyone know it was back. That's what it was like. We did the customer workout. Sometimes we went on site. It was great for our manager training. Because in GE, if you're going to be at a senior officer level, we want you to have worked in a long cycle business, short cycle business, consumer business, government business. It is everything's different if you're running a government, including the way you get paid, including the things you paid for, and things like that. So we did it by bringing customers to Crowell. We never charge. We have a great dining room. We put them up. We have a great hotel. The things we learned, this is powerful advantage. Wing to wing, it's wonderful to know your customer better. And by the way, you become indispensable to your customer, and that's a competitive advantage for you. And we weren't the cheapest vendor, but we helped Delta understand that they had the engine back 2 days before they knew they had it. They had the engine back to put it back on the wings. We gave it that name because it was an early success. And remember, no blaming, no complaining. You deliver something they need and they don't know. But you can do something about it. If you're not choosing not to, that's your fault. And sometimes you're doing dumb stuff. But when you work with customers that you see you through, we're doing dumb stuff. Maybe we may rush to the wrong location. There's all kinds of things. And Delta takes a day to send it back to where it should be. What keeps us from sending it to the place it should be? If you can help a customer, that's your job. What's a more important job than helping your customer?
Brilliant, Steve. If there's anything people get from the book, it's don't blame the rat. You could have called the book "Don't Blame the Rat."
Well, I wanted to go reward and measurement, and I didn't know enough to fight back. So you look at the subtitle, reward system. Does yours measure up?
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Author of Reward Systems. Does yours measure up? Don't blame the rat. Steve Kerr, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.